Hello, listeners. I'm Martha McGee, the CEO and co founder of Nine Dot Arts. And today I have the pleasure of chatting with Sam Stein, the VP of Strategy and Development at Of Place. Sam, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
It's nice to have you here, and I'm excited for you to share some of your story with our listeners. Can you tell us more as we are just grounding into who you are and what you do? Tell us about your role at Of Place.
Sure. Sam Stein, I'm from Tampa originally, where I am now. And my trajectory of place is an interesting one, but started kind of my interest in this space in college studying environmental science, actually, more focused on the intersection of the built and natural environment and psychology. Um, and that kind of led me into the world of urban planning, urban development, where I eventually landed back in Tampa to help lead the Water Street Tampa development. I was working specifically on kind of the retail and ground plane placemaking efforts of that project. And on day one, I met my future colleagues at Of Place. And so we got to work hand in hand for 6 years before I kind of jumped ship, switched teams, and joined the Of Place team formally. Luckily, I've continued to work with SVP on the rest of Water Street, but got to kind of open up my eyes to all the projects around the country beyond just the one in Tampa I had been working on with Of Place. And so, at that time we were 4 people. We're now 14 with offices in 6 states. We focus mainly on mixed use master plan developments in urban areas across the US. And I help kind of oversee our strategy and consulting arm primarily. And then as of late, we've been kind of leaning more into kind of development itself. And so helping kind of the initial efforts in that world. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as someone who's also from the Gulf Coast, so I was born and raised in Mobile, Alabama, and
Sure.
for me it was a pretty big deal to leave home and go somewhere
Hmm.
else. And you did the same thing. You left Tampa, went to school at Duke, but then you kind of came back, and now you're really having a hand in the biggest projects that have happened in Tampa in our lifetime. Water Street is incredible, and that to me has been the biggest pivotal shift of creating a luxury market and this walkable part of town for Tampa that's really centered around arts and culture and great retail and great food that didn't exist before. You created a new market there. And I'll just tell a quick personal story. So, being from Mobile, I left, went to school in Colorado, and now I'm working on a project in Mobile, Alabama for the new arena
I mean,
and helping
amazing.
to, it's
Yeah.
amazing, and restore and relocate a historic mosaic. Into the new arena building, which is amazing. And for me, being able to come back to my hometown and work on something of such great significance, it brings just an amazing sense of pride, and honestly something where at the time, when I lived there and then when I moved away, I never thought in a million years I'd get the opportunity to work in my hometown on something of that scale. So what's it like for you to get out of Tampa and then come back into Tampa and
Yeah.
get to work on the biggest things that have happened in Tampa in the past few decades?
Yeah, no, it's been pretty unexpected, but very special. Um, when I originally reached out to Water Street, I was all intent on going back to school actually for urban planning.
Mm.
I was living in DC at the time and was looking in the West Coast, looking in the Northeast. No real intention of coming back to Tampa. But I wanted to kind of build up the resume for those schools. So I was like, you know what? Let me go home, focus on my test taking, do some kind of local work in the urban planning world so that I'm maybe a better applicant. So I reached out to SBP, eventually led to a meeting with Brian Mall, who then was the executive vice president of SPP, is now the CEO of Gateway Jacks, which we're working on together with you
Yep,
all. Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and
Thank you.
at the end of the conversation, he was just like, "Don't go back to school. You'll learn everything you need right here." And that was really a turning
True.
point in my career,
Yeah.
where I didn't think I had the skill set or the experience to work on a project like Water Street. And he took a chance, and that really changed everything. And I told him, like, this is really where I wanted to end up after going to school, working on a transformative project that was the intersection of urban planning, sustainability, arts and culture, and plus it's in my hometown. And so that's really what brought me back. And what I had found, and I'm sure you have found being back in Mobile, is places change. Tampa wasn't the same place it was when I grew up, and I found myself really enjoying the trajectory of Tampa and being involved in this huge growth in our city, and basically joining that like cheerleading squad of like trying to root Tampa on and tell everyone how great it was and show all the progress that was happening. And so
Mm.
um, now that phase one is done and Water Street has been kind of unveiled and so successful, it's been a really proud moment for myself. But it's, yeah, I think for my family and my friends, I think when you work in real estate projects, you realize you're really in the people business.
Mm.
And that's really what gets me involved in this, is the impact that the built spaces we work on have on the communities. And so when it's in a place where you have already so much tie to the community, it just makes it that much more rewarding. So it's been
Absolutely.
awesome.
I mean, that human side of development is really what makes or breaks a place. It changes how it
Yeah.
feels. And your team at Of Place talks a lot about the difference between creating a space and creating a place. So how do you talk about that distinction and creating this place that people care about?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we talk about that a lot because so much of our time is focused on what the place looks and feels like, how it's designed, what materials are used, and that is creating beautiful space. But a place is really how people use it and how they remember it and how they share it, how the experiences are created, and that happens after you deliver a project, is the inhabitants, you know, taking ownership over it. And that's when you realize that a place has been created, when the community feels like it's reflecting who they are. And so
Yeah.
they have pride in it and they take ownership in it. And that's hard. But some of the greatest places in the world aren't always beautiful spaces, but they're places that are cherished by the community, and that's what makes them special and makes you want to visit them and be a part of them. I talk about it a lot when thinking about how curated spaces can feel. When an alley doesn't feel like an alley anymore, it kind of feels more like a mall. And there's definitely like a scale of when it feels authentic or not. But the people who kind of operate in there, the tenants, the programmers, the artists, those are the people who make it feel authentic. And normally, that has to be local based for it to feel special.
Absolutely. And I think Water Street has that sense of place. I mean, it really gives you this undeniable connection to where you are, the creative atmosphere where you are, some of the best of the culture that's in that local community. But aside from a project that you've worked on, what about a place that you've been or that you like to go on vacation or somewhere that you might have come across in your travels or experiences and you thought, "Oh, this is it. This is really, what place really means."
I feel lucky that our job takes us to so many awesome, places. Uh, so we get to see a lot. And whether it's like visiting Charleston recently for a project and just walking up and down King Street, or going into kind of hole in the wall oyster shacks, those are special experiences. We were just recently in New York, and we often say New York is in a category of its own, in terms of place, and nothing. no lessons there can be applied anywhere else because it's New York and it's special. But it continues to um, surprise me how much depth of culture there is in every inch of that place. Um, so working in Brooklyn recently, I got to spend a lot more time in that area around Prospect Park and Prospect Heights, and
Mm.
it's those places are really special. I'd say in all of my travels, uh, I've spent a lot of time in Barcelona, and it continues to be one of my favorite places in the world. Um, and that place is just so rich with culture,
Mm.
um, in such a wide variety of spaces. So you have the Gothic district, you have the waterfront, the beaches. You get into kind of the beautiful gridded neighborhoods on La Jampla, and it's it still just fascinates me, that city. And um, honestly, hard to replicate things that have been around for so long.
Sure.
But there's some lessons that we can pull from that.
Oh yeah, from Las Ramblas, I think is this
Yeah,
pedestrian mall there that's really beautiful and has like tree-lined spaces and outdoor dining, things that you've replicated in some of the work that you've done. And then even the interesting architectural features that you can find throughout the city with Gaudi's work and
of
the
course.
parks that are done with Gaudi. So things that really stand out, I feel like are part of what makes that place so special too.
Yeah, we took a lot of lessons in early planning of Water Street, particularly, um, of a lot of European cities, specifically Barcelona, trying to make the sidewalk more of a living room for the development. And
Yeah,
so,
love
one of the
that.
big moves along Water Street was setting back the buildings on the east side about 45 feet from the curb, which economically doesn't make a lot of sense to developers. You're giving up density, you're giving up buildable square footage, but we've always believed, of place and SPP as a whole, in the value of the ground plane, and that
Yeah.
executing that has kind of outsized impact on the whole development. And
Mm.
so that early move, I think, really set us up for success, showing kind of the dedication to the ground plane, um, giving the retail room to express itself, people to kind of inhabit the neighborhood, um, in that kind of living room sense.
So if we think about the sidewalk as a living room, and to your point, that may not have made a lot of sense on paper, right?
Yeah.
But the value is there. So in our world, we're constantly emphasizing that placemaking is a value driver. It's not this
Oh yeah.
nice to have. But, how do you prove that business case and say this is an undeniable asset? How does protecting that ground plane, it does provide that long-term asset value, but I'm sure there must be moments where, you're trying to explain the the value that's created by something that on a spreadsheet maybe doesn't compute.
It's a long time struggle trying to prove the value of place, but we've gotten smarter about it over the years, and we have a couple case studies. Um, and we kind of put it in two categories. There's delivering that ground plane and investment early in a project, like Water Street, it's done from the beginning, and then showing examples of where you have existing living, breathing assets, and you kind of inject that placemaking later on. So, Water Street as an example, and others that we've worked on, we've started to show that retail spaces lease faster, there's less turnover, rents in the vertical buildings are higher, where you can see kind of investment in that public realm, and
Yeah.
thoughtful curation of the retail. And then there's other projects like Rice Village in Houston that we worked on for a long time. That was an existing shopping center that we worked for about 7 years on repositioning that, basically from the ground up. New brand, new public realm, new merchandising, and the transformation of that center has been able to speak volumes to a lot of our other clients, to show here's where we were and here's where we are now, and look at the rents, look at the level of merchandising you've been able to achieve, and a
Yeah.
lot of that was driven through kind of public realm infrastructure, art, retail planning. So we always say that there's developers in two camps. There's enlightened developers and reluctant developers.
Mm,
It's a lot easier to convince the enlightened developers of the value of place, but we've had some success stories convincing the latter. But I know, I mean, I've seen the work that you guys do on the ROI on art and public art, and it's, that type of work I think is really important for our industry. So I'm glad that you guys do that. I hope it continues, and more of those case studies are going to help turn development to focus even more on this in the future.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And we're not going anywhere. So we're going to
Yeah,
continue that work and studying the results of having a place that is filled with arts and culture and brings these social assets to the table that ultimately do drive value. And yes, it is measurable. And sometimes it's not measurable until you're operating, right? But like you mentioned, you
absolutely.
can see those higher lease rates. You can see lower vacancy. You can see lower turnover. And then people go, well, what is it that makes it so special? And it was that upfront investment, that upfront capital in creating a place that's well designed, that's well laid out, that gives room in the ground plane, that uses the sidewalk as a living room, that brings in all of these cultural assets that makes a difference. And ultimately, the people who get it are going to invest in it and benefit from it. And good for them. Maybe it's not for everyone.
Yeah,
Maybe not every developer is the one to, put that forward, but the ones who do will benefit from it. So good, good for them and good for the believers.
yeah. We find that the one way to measure it sometimes is just the durability of projects and how they stay relevant for longer. So
Yeah.
those who do invest in that upfront place infrastructure often see more stability through market cycles and stay relevant for longer because ultimately um, culture is dynamic, retail is dynamic. You need to be able to adapt kind of to the trends, and the more flexibility you can build into projects allow you to adapt through the changes and not have to just, oh, all right, 5 years later, let's redo it all. Let's, put some lipstick on the pig to stay relevant again. You can stay um, a little bit more long-term value oriented when you do that upfront investment.
Absolutely. And that difference in having long-term asset value is something I feel like people who are building need to ask themselves up front. What is the time horizon of your
Yes.
investment? Is this something that you want to be proud of for decades to come, or are you trying to, build something that turns a profit in a few years and then you tear it down?
Yeah, I mean
Those are
that's
very
a core
different
part of our
approaches.
business is saying that we don't just stay in the soft science of placemaking. We need to understand kind of the backbone of the development here and get into the financial structures because ultimately our recommendations, your goals are all going to be driven from that bottom line. And so,
Right.
are you a long-term holder? Are you trying to flip this in 5 years?
Yeah.
There's great choices for either, but it's just going to mean something different for what you're willing to do,
Right.
or the strategies that you employ.
So, when we think about creating these amazing places, you've got every city, even every neighborhood within that city has its own personality. So, how do you work to translate this local culture and this identity into something physical without it feeling forced? And,
Yeah.
we've talked about you're in 6 different states. So, you've got to do that authentically everywhere you go. You've got, Cherry Creek West that's happening in Denver. You've got Gateway Jacks in Jacksonville. You've got Gasworks in Tampa. So all of these different things, have to feel like they've got that local authenticity. But what does that look like in practice?
Yeah, and while our offices are in 6 places, I think our projects now span over 25 states,
Oh, wow.
including
Ah.
Toronto now. So we're international,
Amazing.
which is
International.
fun.
I love it.
Yep, planting the flag across the border. Um, but yeah, we'd say there's two parts of that. One is the upfront market research into what makes that place tick, from the demographics to uh, gaps in uh, gaps in their parks and recreation programs. What are the growing neighborhoods? So in general, just a lot of upfront market research on these places to help us identify what are some through lines that we can pull in our project that will resonate with the community.
Mm.
But second, it's really finding the individuals, whether those are the artists, the musicians, the chefs, those people who really understand their context, understand their community. Those are the people who make a place feel authentic, and finding collaborative ways to partner with them. We always drive our merchandising as local first. The coolest places that exist are those that locals love first.
Right.
A tourist wants to go there because locals love to go there, and so we always kind of push that on our team. Not to say that nationals aren't important from a merchandising perspective, but locals often drive kind of early place value, and lots of examples of that. Particularly here at Water Street, when we started with Sparkman Wharf with our little shipping container food
Mhm.
park.
Love it.
Um,
Yeah, it's such a
those
cool
were
spot, and everyone hangs out there.
yeah,
Everyone in Tampa hangs out there.
and those were 9 chefs when we started who already had reputations in Tampa, who people trusted. We the developer was new to town. People didn't really know much about them, and so the brand of Sparkman was really built on the back of these local chefs who had a lot of kind of cultural equity in the
Yep.
community. And I know I give a lot of the early success of Sparkman really to those chefs and those teams who kind of made the place feel of Tampa,
Yep.
and of the place that we were trying to represent. So
And that adds to the durability of projects that you mentioned. If you've got a local market that is
yeah,
consistently going to be there, tourism may ebb and flow, but
yep,
having a local market diversifies your revenue stream, and creates that long-term stability that everyone is looking for when you're talking about making an investment in something like real estate.
absolutely.
And when you think about projects like that, and then the one that we're working together on with Pearl Square and Jacksonville and the Gateway Jacks team, in all of those places, we're thinking about how to reflect local character while creating something that's also world class, right? And defining this new downtown neighborhood or new districts like you've been doing. And in these kinds of projects, what role does art play in that long term identity of place?
I mean, a huge part of what we like to focus on is public art. It is, as you I'm sure know in your experience, often viewed as like a nice to have, but we
Mhm.
really feel that it should be something kind of part of the base underwriting, the base structure of these developments. Um, it often acts as a mirror to the community, reflecting their values,
Mm.
their hopes, and something that they take civic pride in. There's like a funny example of this at the Tampa International Airport, which does a phenomenal job with art. If you ever get to
The
walk around
Matthew
there,
Masudo, if you're I think I know the one you're about to tell me about. I
yeah.
love
So
it.
Phoebe, the flamingo,
Yeah,
has
she's got a
become kind of,
name.
yeah. She's got a name, and that was like
Mhm.
voted on by the public and submitted, and it's something that people love to joke about, but it is something that the community feels like is theirs. Sparkman and Water Street, we had a large public art strategy, both targeting great up and coming local artists and international artists. And it becomes the hot spots for social media in a way to identify a place. It becomes part of the brand. It becomes an element of wayfinding and how people gather and meet and understand kind of the dynamics of the neighborhood. Um, so it's public art has been around for forever. It's not going anywhere. And so if you can lean into it in the early planning, I think it just makes more impact than you would expect on your
Yeah.
projects.
You're speaking our language there,
Yeah.
and I'm also a big fan of Phoebe and the
Yeah.
artist who made her. Oh, so when you think about shifts and changes, right? Because looking towards the future is part of your job. You're building places that the public may not see for 10 years, right? And so as you're thinking on those cycles, in your mind, how do you think placemaking evolves, especially as cities might change and retail adapts and people might demand more from public space? What do you think about? What's your kind of optimistic view, and maybe any advice you might give to developers who are starting a major mixed use project?
Yeah, I mean, there are, often tried and true placemaking tactics that I think aren't going anywhere. People love being outdoors but shaded. So
Hmm.
buy big trees. So in addition to kind of outdoor space where the public feels comfortable and engaged by, retail around them, programming has been one of the main things that we've seen change over time. And that
Okay.
trend is happening more quickly. So
Okay.
places that are flexible and adaptable, we're finding are the most successful. So planning for infrastructure for a variety of music events or for pop-up retail, um, those spaces need to be really dynamic because the trends on TikTok spread like wildfire, and all of a sudden you
Right.
need a you know pop-up coffee shop that is bright yellow for whatever reason. Um,
It's
so
a
you know,
thing.
yeah, it's a thing, and I think previously it was always like, okay, you just need a plaza where you can do events, but more and more we're seeing physical spaces, storefronts that need to be able to change and adapt really quickly. So, white box spaces that brands can take over and do an experience. People are, you know, looking for all these really immersive experiences. And if you have space to provide those, you'll be more successful at pulling in the customers. So, yeah, overall, I think it's about planning infrastructure that can be dynamic and adaptable
Yep.
because we don't know what the next trend is, while also kind of paying heed to tried and true things. So invest in big trees, bring in
Yep.
water features, invest in art. Um, you know, every space sounds great with a little bit of music.
Love it.
So
Water, shade, music, art. We're just like plants, like
yeah,
we just want sunlight, but just a little.
yeah,
We need
exactly.
some water. We need the food for our souls,
Yep.
like the good food and then the arty food and then the music food to keep our souls rich. And yeah, I mean, there's elements that are always going to be evolving, and having some flexible infrastructure in place is super important, but those timeless qualities can't be overstated.
Yeah, a little bit of advice that the founding partner Rob Mosley gave our team a long time ago was make places where someone can come and spend the day and spend only $20.
Yeah.
And so are there little ways that people can have interactions or experiences, whether that's a flower cart or an ice cream vendor or free live music, where you don't have to tie your trip to a place with spending a lot of money, and those are really successful places. And so finding little ways for the public to engage for free or at low cost is something that we try to also embed in our project so that anyone can come and there's not that barrier of, all right, I'm spending, X amount today in order to go have fun at this place. And I think given economic times right now, like that's probably even more true than ever.
Yep.
Um, so finding ways to invite the community in at low cost is another little tactic that we try to,
Love
employ.
that. It makes it part of the daily commute. And if you can, yeah, create an outdoor living room that is memorable, a place that you want to experience, and you can go and spend a day and spend $20 or less, like sold. Who doesn't want to
Yeah,
do that, really?
exactly.
Well, as we wrap, there's one question I like to ask everyone on the show. Can you tell us about a place, an interaction, or an experience recently that reminded you why art and culture matter and what struck you about that experience?
Personal experience was my wife and I had a chance to go to Blackberry Mountain
Oh, I've heard
outside.
amazing. things.
Yeah, it was really special. I mean, the setting is gorgeous in the Smokies and
Yeah.
just a beautiful resort. But we had a kind of unexpected interaction with a beautiful piece of art in the woods. Um, it's a large wooden troll. The artist Thomas Dambo or Dombo, I'm not sure how you say it. He's a Danish
Yeah.
artist, and um, he takes a lot of kind of local trees that are needed during development of some sort of project and creates these huge whimsical trolls. And there are several of them around the world. Um, and it was funny and fun, but also made us reflect. I mean, both of my wife and I studied environmental science in school, so sustainability is always top of mind. And
Right.
um, it was just like that perfect interaction of like a thoughtful but fun piece of artwork that was unexpected and is such a memorable experience for us on that trip, that hike. um, and it just reminded me of like how impactful a piece of artwork can be. When I think back to that trip, it's in the highlight reel. um, and my goal now is to have him build a troll on one of our projects
I
somewhere
love
else.
it. Yes, there's a
uh,
great one here in Breckenridge for your next trip out to
in the
Colorado to
woods, right?
yep, yep,
Yeah,
that's a fun one to visit. And you can see them, like you mentioned, all over the world and have a great experience. And there is that local aspect each time because of the materials. And then
yeah.
there's also an element of discovery. And then they're outsized for where they are. They're kind
Oh
of in the
yeah.
middle of the woods. You're like, wow, so someone spent a lot of time on this, and they're not loud, in terms of like being on the plaza in a big
Yeah,
city
exactly.
somewhere.
Yeah.
You have to work for it a little bit, which I
Hmm.
think makes it even more special.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a lot of fun working with some of the artists here at Water Street, and some of the other projects. But I always like when it's something unexpected. I had no idea is there, and stumble upon it and makes, that big impact. Um, and on the other side of the scale, something that is set in the plaza that everyone knows about, that you see 1,000 pictures of, is the Bean. I remember we were there for New Year's, and it was freezing. We ended up going towards the Bean, and I had never actually stood in front of it. Um, and I just remember being kind of breathtaking at like, oh, it's amazing. That's why everyone talks about it. And it's so simple in its form, and it's sometimes hard to explain why art has such an impact on you. But you know, even the dropped in ones in the center of very famous plazas, they have their moments too.
Well, and it reflects you back to you, and there's
Yeah,
something about that. It reflects you back to you, but in a distorted way, and so there's just this element of curiosity that I think every human has about seeing themselves in a distorted mirror, you know? So I feel like people love it for so many reasons. It's like a monumental landmark sculpture mixed with, a fun house, like a mirrored fun house
yeah.
vibe, and so you can experience it in many different ways from a distance, up close, and each one, has something to offer.
Yeah, and to our point before, that is a symbol of Chicago. Like it
Mhm.
is being equal Chicago. It's the way that art can really absorb the identity of a place and reflect it back. So, hopefully there will be more of those that we get to work on together on our projects.
Absolutely. Can't wait. We're here for all of it. Well,
Yeah.
Sam, thank you so much for not only the opportunity to work together, but the opportunity to have you on the show today and share some of your stories and your experiences. And if our listeners want to learn more about you and your work, where can they find you?
Um, Go to our website, ofplace.com. Very simple and easy. And yeah, thank you again for the time and working together, and um, continuing to broaden uh, our minds to the world of art. No one does what you guys do, and we're really glad that you do it. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Our pleasure. So we will include those links and links to other topics that you heard today in our show notes. And definitely check out more about what Of Place and what Sam is doing. Thank you so much, Sam. It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you. Good to see you.